This is Gemara Baba Kama Daf Kuf Vav as Baruch Hashem. We are closing in B'siyata Dishmaya, the final 2 weeks or so of this incredible Misechta, a little less than 2 weeks, and we're holding on Kofheim and base. We're approximately 14 lines from the bottom. The first one line is dummy. Amar Rav Sheshes, continuing the theme of Shomrim, and there we'll call it reaction to when someone makes a claim against them. Omar Rav Sheshes teaches Rav Sheshes. Ha-koifer bibikadoi nase lov gaz. If we have a shomer and he's koifer, he denies that he had a bikadon, a deposit, when in reality it's sitting in his backyard, it's in his pocket. It says the Gemara nasa lov gazlan, he becomes a gazlan the moment he says, I don't have it. At that moment, he's a gazlan. V'chayov be'oinsin, and therefore, he is not considered, he's obligated in oinsim, even unavoidable mishaps. Why? Because he's a gazlan. V'tana tuna, and we learned in a brayz of Kicheshba, says the pasuk that if he denies it, talking to the Shemer Lamanu Oynesh Azara. Lamanu Oynesh, we learn from there the Oynesh, the one who denies having an item, he's considered a chayiv for Oinsin. Azara Minayin, where in the Torah do we find warning against this? Talmud Leimar. Lo yisechachashu. You should not deny. My love, lo oynesh, mamoin or kfira. Says Gemara, lo oynesh shvua. This is the punishment for swearing false. Says the Gemara, 1 second. The Sefer is talking about a shvua, not the reisha. The Ktani Sefer v'nishala sheker. Lamanu, from the Sefer that discusses swearing falsely, we learn Einesh hazara minayin. Where do we know the hazara of shvua? Tamlo lo sishakru. So proves the Gemara that the Reisha is talking about we did not swear. And this is going to be the Azara for one who denies having the Pikadin in his possession, that he's going to get the din of a Gazlan. So much so, he's Chayv even Oinsim. So the Brisa corroborates and proves the opinion of Rav Sheshes. Says the Gemara, Amri, no. I divided the Ishtaba. Really, I'll tell you, both parts of the Brisa refer to a Shvuah. Kansha Haida, Kansha Bo Eidim. Also, Eidim Chayv Oinsim. Says the Gemara, 1 second, if Eidim come, he's Chayv in Oinsim. Chayv Karen V'chayvish V'asham. So 2 different dinim that are going to be learned out of a similar scenario, but the Brisa cannot be used as a raya of Sheshes. Again, it's not that it's a kasha on Rav Sheshes, just this Brisa is not a raya to Rav Sheshes. So in as much as we have a 2 dots over here, in reality, we're continuing the discussion of Rav Sheshes. Again, Rav Sheshes that teaches us one who is kaifer in Pikadain is considered a gazlan and he's michayv in oinsim. Asks the Gemara on Rav Sheshes, Masiv Rami Bar Chama. 4 lines from the bottom, the end of Kofheim B'Beis Ushekinegdai Chashid Al Shvua Ketzad. What is the case when the Shekinegdai, the guy opposing him, is a chayiv? He's suspected on a shvua, and he's going to collect. Ketzad. In all of these scenarios, what happens is that they're obligated to swear, to make himself pater, and rather, he himself has to swear to say that he's not going to pay, and not the opposite. And if you're going to tell me, like Rav Sheshes, that this shomer that denies having the pikadain is considered a gazlan even without a shvua. That's the critical ingredient that we're saying right now. He's considered a gazlan, and what? He's chayv in oinsim, and that has nothing to do with the shvua. If that is true, b'kfira hu de'ifsalei, then it's the kfira that makes it into the gazlan. And this Bryce that we just quoted, it sounds like it's the Shvuah that makes him into the Gazlan. Amri answers the Gemara, Hacha b'mayaskinan, Dekai ba'agam delav kfirahu. It's not a real kfira because it doesn't have the item. Desava ishtamuti lei, adazelna ma'asina lei. He has a good Meir heter. He feels I'll just push him off until I'll be able to go get to the animal as it's not in his possession. And that's the reason why, Dafka, in this case, you need to have the Shvuah, and it's not enough the Kfira. Says the Gemara, Teida, let's bring a raya again, not to Rav Sheshes, but a raya that we can make this fundamental chilik between having the animal in his possession and now with regard to whether the Haidah makes, or the Kfira, I should say, makes him into a Gazlan. Teida. Kosher leidis, one who's koifer in the milva, and then what happens is he's later Eidim come along and prove that he's wrong, that he really is chayiv. The halacha is kosher leidis, but bifikadain, as we turn over to Kavavam and Aleph, then pasal leidos, as the top Rashi speaks out. In the beginning of a Metzia, which will be there soon enough, B'siyat the Shemaya, ki going to Amri Sadi, the Shaita the Kafir, La, Lay, Nakibiyadi. The moment he was Kaifer, at that moment, in reality, he actually had the item in his possession, the Kafir Lay Nakat, Biyade, Umifsal, Afal Gav Delo Yishtaba, the Yishtaba Mali Lemilva Mali Bekadu. So even without the Shvuah, he's puzzled in this case, says the Gemara, proving to us the chilik, whether he actually has the animal in his possession, whether he has the chayfetz in his possession or not, whether the mere kfira makes him into a gazlan or it's only with a shvuah sheker. Ask the Gemara further another kasha on Rav Sheshes, the top line of Kavavam and Aleph. Ve'amar Ilfa, but Ilfa has taught shvuah kaina, that a shvuah is that which makes a kinyan. And from here we can be medayik shvuah dekan yav a kfira loy. Sounds like it's dafka the shvuah. But according to Rav Sheshes, even the mere kfira, the denying is that which makes him chayiv, that which makes him into a gazlan chayiv in einsim. Says the Gemara, hachanami av kfira loy kanya. Hachanami de kaima ba'agam. Like we said before, what does that mean? Manali biyad chavalei mein lach biyad divinisha v'achal ba'idim pater shenemar v'lachach ba'alav lo yishalin kiv shekablu ba'ilim shvua shav ein mishalmin mamayin. So proves this din. Now this last din of Rav we read a bit fast, but have no fear. As the Gemara right now, Gufa delves deeply into this statement of Rav. Gufa says the Gemara 10 lines down. The first line is Amar. Amar Rav Huna Amar Manali biyad chavalei mer. Ein lach biyadi klum. Reuven says to Shimon, you owe me $100, and Shimon responds, nope, I do not owe you anything. Vinishma, and he swears that he doesn't owe him anything. Ubo eidim come, that in reality he does owe him. The halacha is potter, he doesn't have to pay. Shenem v'lach bailav v'loi yishalein. The owner come and they should be paid. Kivan shekiblo bailim shvua shov ein mishalmim mamoin. A fascinating halacha. You would think there's eidim. But once the Bailam accepted the Shvuah, no longer can he be compelled to pay, even by Eidim. Says the Gemara, let's understand this din of Rav. Again, I'm Ravuna, Amar Rav. Amar Rav, Mistavra Milsa de Rav. This din of Rav is Mistaver, is understandable b'milveh, in alone. Why? Till I saw it, Avlikada, in Pershut de Marekai. But a Bekadah should always be in the possession of the owner. But Valakim, he makes a Shvuah Marav Afilu Bekadain. This din of Rav seemingly would only make sense by a milva. But says the Gemara, reality, he says it even by a Bekadain. The Chiksev, Karabah Bekadain Sev. Because a Pasuk is written with regard to Bekadain. And therefore, any time the Bailam accepted a shvuah, even if afterwards there are edim, he will not be obligated. Says the Gemara, 2 lines from the wide lines. Yosef Rav Nachman v'kam lo shmaitzam. Rav Nachman was sitting, he was saying over this din. Eisvei Rav Acha bar Menumi Rav Nachman. They asked Rav Nachman the following: Hey Chan Pikdaini, what happens in the following scenario, if someone says to the shomer, where is my bikadon? Amar loy, and the shomer responds, Avad, I lost it. Bashmiachani, swear to me to that extent. V'amar amen, he makes a shvur. And then v'edim edin aisayisha achlai, the edim say, guess what? The shvur was sheker, and he really has the item, he ate it. Me'shalim es ha-karen, he has to pay for the karen. Hoydem me'atzva, mishal karen v'chaymish v'ashan. He has to pay for all of them. So what do we see? We see even after there was a shvur, still with edim he could be chayiv. It wasn't a real shvuah bezdin. The shvuah happened outside of bezdin. The Sefer says, here says to him, where is my pikadon? Amrlei nignav was stolen. Mashviachani v'amar amein. He swears. V'edem eden aisay sheganvay. Mishan tashlumei kevel. He has to pay kevel. Hoydem me'asr mishan keren chayin shvasha. If you're going to tell me this whole story is chutz lebezdin, mi ika kefel. If this whole story happened, chutz lebezdin, then would there be any kefil? It makes no sense. We know that the entire din of kefil, of course, only can happen in Bezdin. So how can you suggest that this Shavua was outside of Bezdin? Amar Le responds Rav Nachman 6 lines into the wine lines. Yecholna l'shni l'chal, answer you. No big deal. Reisha chutz lebezdin v'seifa bebezdin. Says the Gemara, mihu b'Rav Nachman emitz. Sheniu dechakina lo mishanina. It's a dachak answer. I don't want to say such. And therefore, I'll tell you, bezdin, really everything is in bezdin. V'loi kasha, kan bekofatz, kan v'shloi kofatz. First case is where he jumped, and he brought the shomer to bezdin, and he, the baldin, the one claiming the money, made him make the shvua. Kan shaloi kofatz. The latter case is where Bezdin made the shvua. So we're saying here, it's not just the shvua, it's the shvua when it's being administered by Bezdin. Amar le Rami Bar Chama le Rav Nachman Michti. The Rav lo shvir l'cham ashkoini. Rav, I know you don't hold of Rav. Excuse me, the Rav lo shvir l'cham. Mishkoini navshach ad Rav l'amar lach. So then why do you have to defend Rav? To explain Rav? What's the problem? We're just explaining his opinion. To Rav Achim Medar told him Asisa to Rav would explain the Mishnah. For Rav Krok Amar, but Rav's whole din that once there is a shvua, there's no longer can ever be a chiyuv is coming from a pasuk. Answers the Gemara Amri Kra L'chol and Ishvain Shabbatar Nishvam Lo Mishalm Hu Dasa V'Lokach Malav Lo Nishalem. That what's Rav talking about, the pasuk he's teaching us a different din. But the pasuk says, Misha'alav l'shalem hu nishba. That's what the pasuk is teaching us. It's not a kasha, the pasuk, because we can say that Rav learned the pasuk differently. Masiv Rav Amnuna continues the Gemara asking kashas on Rav. Haishabiyah alav chamisha b'amav, he swears 5 times, and then bein b'vnei bezdin, bein shlo b'vnei bezdin, v'kafar alav chayiv al kol achas v'achas. V'amar Rav Shimon ma'atam, why is he chayiv for each and every time he was shavu nishba l'sheker? Hav yachal achzil oidais, v'acha kafetz, but in this case, he forced him to swear on his own. V'lo matzadam nishbi alav, katani chutz lebezdin. Loy matzis excuse me, hishbi alav katani chutz lebezdin lo matzis amrit, b'vnei bezdin katani. But because it says it's in front of Bezdin, and even though it's in front of Bezdin, we still see that the Shavua is a real Shavua. So ask the Gemara, how could this be that even though he takes a Shavua, he's still going to be chayiv to pay? What happened to the din of Rav? Answers the Gemara, we have to explain the Braisa l'stadu katani in 2 different cases. And in Bezdin is when they jumped up and made him swear. So 2 different cases, we split them in 2, and then it is not a kasha. Masiv Rava, continues the Gemara asking on Rav, Masiv Rava, Balabayis Shaitan, Tainis Ganav because Venishba, and then Vahidi and Mitzvah, Vahidim and Edim come, Himachlo Vahidim, if he admitted before the Edim came, Misham Karen Vachai Mishvash, like every Haida, and Mishabah Edim Haida, if he only admitted After the Eidim came, then Mishan Tashlumei Kefil Va'asham, and there's no Tashlumim of the Chaimesh. In this case, Chutz Lebezdin V'Kavatz Loimatzis Amrit Kefil Katani. And if there's Kefil, we just finished saying a few moments ago, it has to be in Bezdin. Ela Marava Kol Haida Loishana Toin Tanis Avav Loishana Toin Tanis Kanef. It's two different cases. Nami or not Nami. In those two cases, Ravs did not apply. Save as the Basin's Visvada. And for there we learn out the Bayish Lumi Karen V'chaimish. Toin Tanis Ganav Uba'idim Nami Loyamar Rav. Why? Doksiv Tashlumi Kef. Ki Ka'amar. When does the din of Rav apply? Ki Goy. She'toin Tainas Avad V'nishba. V'loy Haida Uba'idim. And then Eidim come. In such a scenario, that is where Rav is coming along to teach us that from the psukim he learns that once he swears in this specific situation, there will be no chiyuv tashlumim. Says the Gemara, Azal Rav Gamda v'amar l'shemaitza kamei de Rav Ashi. Rav Gamda went, said over the din in front of Rav Ashi, Amar lei, hash to Omar Rav Hamnuna Talmidei Rav. Rav Hamnuna is the Talmud of Rav, and he did not explain Rav's din like Rava. V'yada dam Rav Haida, and he knew that Rav said his din even in the case where he admitted v'kamaisiv, and he asked Haida v'at amrid Haida, and you're asking Haida layam Rav, meaning how are you able to interpret Rav's case more narrowly than his own Talmidim? This was his kash as we turn over to Kavav Amid Aleph. Kavav makes basic, excuse me. If you're going to tell me Nishba, if you're going to tell me that he swore falsely, then I understand they're going to be chayim a carbon ashvua basraisa. Since you have the ability to be chayzer and emit, he does not. That's the reason why there's going to be the chiyuv of the chaymesh the whole thing. Kiasa edim potter mika midi dilo asisadi misadi be potter v'na nekov nechayvinu karbon. How could that be? Says the Gemara Ashvuya. Right now, he did not emit, and therefore concludes the Gemara. This is Rav Hamnuna's kasha to Rav, and Rav Hamnuna agrees with Rava, with a Rava learned to Rav that it's only going to be potter from paying when the whole thing came through Eidim and not when he was maida on his own. But the kasha that we just brought up for the Mishnah is a good kasha. So the Mishnah, we see that you would be chayiv to pay even if the Eidim would come along and contradict that which he said. Says the Gemara, continuing the theme of the Shaimrim, the two dots, 8 lines down, Amar Rav Chia bar Abba, Amar Rav Yochanan, Ha-toyin dainis ganav v'bikadam mishan tashlumei kefel tavachum machar mishan tashlumei avrav v'chamish. Hayal v'ganav mishan tashlumei kefel. V'toyin dainis ganav mishan tashlumei kefel. Says the Gemara, Hayal v'ganav. Since in the case of a ganav, if he's stolen himself, he pays kefel. And v'toyin dainis ganav mishan tashlumei kefel. Ma ganav just like ganav should mishalim to kefel. Tavachum machar mishan tashlumei avrav v'chamish. V'toyin dainis ganav. Says the Gemara, why is Tavachu Machar Mishan Teshlume Kefel? You should have to pay $1 v'hei. Answers the Gemara, no, the kasha is not a kasha. Malik Ganav Shki Mishan Teshlume Kefel Shaloi B'Shvua. Toimar B'Toin Dan is Ganav Shki Mishan Teshlume Kefel Ella B'Shvua. Therefore, we cannot equate the two. But says the Gemara, 1 second, Amri. Hekeshi, what happened to the Hekish? Very good, you're explaining, but the Maisa to Hekish is Psukim are in close proximity to each other. Says the Gemara, Anich Laman Damar Chad V'Ganov, V'Chad V'Toyin Tanis Ganif, Shapir El Damar. Hi, in the first white line, Mimate Ganif, Imlay Mate Tarvayo V'Toyin Tanis Ganif. Then Ma'ika. Then what are you going to say? Amri Ganov, Ha Ganov, says the Gemara, that the extra hay allows for this extra drush. Eisvei continues the Gemara on the second white line. Akasha on Rav Yechon. Eiser Chever Rabba le Rav Yechon. Heichon Shairi, if someone asks the Shaimer Chinam, where is my Shaimer? What does the Shaimer Chinam respond? Nignav. Mashmiachani, swear to me, V'amar Amein V'edim Inin Isai, Sha'achlai, that he himself had it, not that it was stolen. Pshadash Sumi Kevel. And yet, we see that even though it's seemingly from the fact, talking about eating the item, clearly, there must have been a shchita. So ask the Gemara, if there was a shchita, why is there only chiyav kefel? There should be a classical chiyav, daled v'hei. Answers the Gemara, hacha b'mayaskinan, koncha achlai nevela. No, the ida is a nevela. There wasn't actually any shchita. Ask the Gemara, lishni leiki koncha achla treifa. Why are you saying nevela? Say that it was a treifa. Kirameir da'amar shchita she'in roya shema shchita. At least it was a shchita. It wasn't a kasha shchita. It was a treifa. But at least at some level it was a shchita, and that's why we did not answer that case. Velishni lei, says the Gemara, beben pakua. Why don't we say the case of ben pakua, the child that's born, which does not need a shchita? Kirameir da'amar. Guess what? Ben pakua tan shchita. Velishni lei going to amar b'din. V'amar loy say 10 loy, go and pay him. The amar Rava says 10 loy tavachum machar pater. My time, Akim de Piskal and Milsa, Tavachum Macher. Once there's a psak, once they say what you have to do, Tavachum Macher Vikaslan, Vikaslan Mishanta, Shlomidal Vehei, Ata Litain Gazlan, Loy Mishalem, Dalar Vehei, Chayev Ata Litain Loy. But if the Bezin just said you're obligated to pay him, then Chayev Dalar Vehei, my time, Alkol Kamadu, Psik Alei Milsa, Kati Ganavu. Unless Bezin said it clearly, still considered a Ganif. Amri says, it must be that not all the cases are listed. And we end off with one final din for the day, about 14 lines in the bottom. First line is Midas Chaveroi. V'amar Rav Chia bar Abba, Amar Rav Yechon. Ha-toyin dan is gana ba'avida mishan d'shul ve'in kefel. So in his toyin dan is gana ba'avida, what's the halacha? You pay kefel. Says the Gemara, my time, well, what's the reason? It says in the Torah, I'll call avida she'yomar, that for all avida, that which you say, and therefore, from there we learn out that one who's toyin dan is gana ba'avida doesn't have to pay kefel. Eisir Rabbar Mamal Rav Chia bar Abba. Ki yedene she'nezinas katan klom ve'inli elo she'nasna kishu katan v'tiba yishu katan nasna shu katan v'tiba shu katan grew up minayin tamaloymar adu elikim yavay davar shneim asher nesina utevia shavin ke'echad. It says Gemara v'isa tevi nami kaveda should be the same case as aveda. Amar le achol ma'yiskin gon sha'ach like shu katan shu gadol ma'ayochnam d'mishalim ihachi the classical kasha the tani. From the fact that it says Asher Nesina Utevia Shavin Kechad, Lisi Asher Yachilo Tvia Shavin Kechad. Amrlei Tni Asher Yachilo Tvia Shavin Kechad. It's true. You should indeed read that into the Mishnah, as the case should indeed be included into the Mishnah. Rav Ashi Amar Lodami Avida. There's a fundamental difference in the case of Aveda, which comes from a bendas, whereas where a case of the Pikatan by the Katan, etc., doesn't come from a bendas. Therefore, the dinim will be different. We'll pick it up from Rav Chia bar Abba the next year of Siyata Dishmaya.